Hey, what's up? Hope everybody had an awesome Halloween weekend and hope everybody had a great start to the week. Just wanted to do a little update. Uh, like I mentioned in the last little vlog update, we had a great advanced screening with The Magnificent Mendez, our latest film. A lot of positive feedback, mostly positive, you know. Can't please everybody, but between how the audience mostly reacted and how Laz and I really strongly feel about what we're able to accomplish, I'm very, very proud of the film. And I think it could be our best work, if not, top two or top three. And I'm very, very proud of it. And I can't wait to give you guys news about where you can catch it next. All right. We are planning maybe one more screening. We're thinking about doing one at our old film school at Full Sail, which would be pretty awesome. It'd be cool to go full circle, um, and hit the old stomping grounds and everything. But we'll keep you guys posted on that. That would be in Orlando. So, um, but as far as what's next for Mendez, right now we are zeroing in on a good home for it. And by home, I mean a distribution company that has a catalog of films that kind of, fit the style of what we were going for with Mendes. So, what is the style of Mendes? For those of you who haven't seen it, um, some people have described it as kind of a dream that becomes a nightmare. That was a good friend of ours described it that way. Actually, more than one person, a fellow cast member, an actor on the film described it that way when she saw it, and a good friend of ours who was at the screening described it that way. Who's pretty honest about what he thinks about our films. Um, but yeah, he described it as it's been described as a dream, and I think that's a good way to describe the film. If I had to, distill it or kind of put it in terms that most people could kind of get what it is, it would, I think, fit sort of neatly into a drama thriller box, but not quite. I don't think so. But I think, there's enough of a thriller aspect to it that it could kind of fit in that box. Um, but it's heavily inspired by visually, at least, by the French New Wave movement in the '60s and '70s, and the stuff that Terrence Malick is doing. Uh, Obviously, this is a movie about. It's not necessarily about it, but the backdrop is cinema, making movies. So we're gonna weave in and out of genres and visual styles naturally, which we do in the film. There's a more classical style filmmaking depending on the scene, and there's obviously, like I mentioned, the thriller aspects of it. There's action in the movie, but I think the more striking and stylistic stuff that you'll see is this kind of impressionistic, free-flowing style of filmmaking. That not everybody, I'm going to be honest, not everybody is used to that, Um, but there's a good group of fans that will get that. Now, obviously, um, maybe I'm biased, but I think there's enough accessibility that if you've never seen that sort of film, uh, that you might be able to enjoy the movie as a whole, despite you never having experienced that, and despite there being sort of a kind of a culture shock, if you will, when you hit those scenes, right? Because those scenes are heavily inspired by a movement that went against the traditional film language. It became almost like a whole new dialect of cinema. This kind of French New Wave, free flowing move style, right? So it's characterized by jump cuts, It's characterized by a free-flowing camera, improvisation, lots of finding things on set, and it can almost be chaotic in a way. You get hit with a lot emotionally, visually, but I think that's what makes the experience of it pretty cool. It's kind of like, again, we wanted to craft a dream, and there's no better way to portray a dream than in that style. When you're in a dream, a lot of things are happening, and you can't really make sense of it. And then when you when you wake up and you look back, like, oh, I see what was going on there. Well, this film, the experience of it was intended to kind of be like, you experience it, and while you're watching, like, all right, well, where's this going? Where's this going? Where's this going? And then after the credits were like, oh, yeah, I see what they were doing there. So that's the intent. Now, I hate. Well, I don't hate it, but it's difficult to talk about your process making a movie, whether it's writing it, directing it, or in my case, acting in it. As well. And the reason why I say that is because I want the audience to take what they're going to take from the film without me steering them towards a specific thought, other than what we did in the movie based on our choices. But, that's the world we live in, and we got to let people know this thing exists. I mean, I want people to see it. So that's why I'm here talking about it. And also, at the end of the day, I want people to have a good time with the movie. So if it's not your cup of tea, I want to give you a little bit of a hint of what you're getting yourself into, before you watch it. So think like Terrence Malick. Imagine like Tree of Life or something like that, and then that kind of weaving in and out of like Francis Ford Coppola and Kubrick style. And then all of a sudden there's a gunfight and a knife fight. That's pretty much the film in a nutshell. But yeah, I think the best way to describe it is kind of a dream, Plot wise though, we were heavily inspired by archetypal motifs from tragedies, going back to Greco-Roman tragedy and mythology and a lot of Shakespeare. So there's a lot of Shakespeare in there. There's a bit of Othello. There's a bit of King Lear in there. There's a little bit of Hamlet. The strongest reference would be that one of the characters is named Ophelia. And if you know the story of Ophelia in Hamlet, then you kind of get an idea of where that character's going. And then, of course, there's a very heavy influence from F. Scott Fitzgerald's work, which when Laz and I were first coming up with the film in one of our drunken conversations, that's how a lot of our ideas come about. We just have a conversation about, hey, what would make a cool movie? And I had just picked up the 2 novels by Fitzgerald. It was The Great Gatsby and his last technically unfinished work, The Last Tycoon. So there was that. That was a big spark of inspiration when I was talking to him about those novels, and then we ended up watching a film that somehow we missed, and it was The Last Tycoon with Robert De Niro and Jack Nicholson. Absolute classic. Highly recommended. And then we started really, really, really sinking our teeth into what the through line would be for the film. It's basically a tragedy. We would call this story a neo-tragedy. If we could invent a whole new genre, we would, and we'd call it neo-tragedies, new tragedies. Because it's very much, plot-wise, it's very much a modern version of what Shakespeare was doing with his tragedies and what, the Greco-Roman guys were doing with their tragedies, It's just that those stories have everything you could want in a story. You know, there's action in them, there's romance in them. There's obviously the modern idea of what tragedy is. There's that too. There's intrigue. I mean, you name it, right? So we love those. We love those stories, and of course, our own all of that stuff kind of filtered through our own perception and experiences, particularly growing up in Miami and you know being Cuban Americans and everything like that. So that's kind of what inspired the Magnificent Mantis. Um, it does again weave in and out of genres, but because a lot of the film's themes are um, art for art's sake, for example, and doing things artistically that may be a bit challenging to an audience, but more fulfilling for those who decide to engage in it. Those things are actually, in a meta way, talked about in the movie. So we had to introduce a style, or lean heavily into a style that is not conventional, or it just wouldn't fit what the characters are talking about in the movie. So we went with a style that's overall is pretty impressionistic, but I think still pretty accessible. And there's a through line of a plot that's kind of easy to follow in the sense that from what we've been told and what our intent was, you know who these characters are, you know what they're trying to do, and all that stuff. And there's a knife fight and a gunfight. So, and then of course there's romance in there and other things that will make this accessible. Um, but there were moments that I think maybe an audience member that hasn't been exposed to that kind of French New Wave style might be like, whoa, what the fuck, what's going on here? But I think if they, you know, sit back and along for the ride, before it's too late, they'll see where it's going. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll be inspired to check out some of the stuff that, well, inspired the movie. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, movies, number one mission is entertainment. So that's our bottom line is if this thing doesn't entertain, then we fail. Um, but from what people were saying at the event screening and what we feel about the movie, we were able to craft something that I believe is very, very obviously artistically fulfilling, but also something that I think people can uh, access, you know, pretty easily. So that's a little bit about Mendes and what inspired it. Now the character himself, you know, the Magnificent Mendes, the titular character, the guy playing the movie. Who is he? Because I'm sure a lot of you are wondering. I don't want to talk too much about him because I think with a title like that, it's kind of what draws you into what the story. You know, David Copperfield. Like, who is that? Who is David Copperfield? If the character's name, or Gatsby, the Great Gatsby, you start to think, why is he great? You know, a title like that kind of makes you curious about who this character is. I don't want to talk too much about him, but I will say what inspired my performance and what the intent was. Which again, I'd rather you watch the movie and whatever you take from the movie, that's it, you know. But if I had to describe what my intent was with the character, or what inspired me as far as performance wise, my North Star was obviously De Niro, his early work. In the Last Tycoon film, and of course his early stuff with The Godfather 2 and Taxi Driver, of course, and all that. I think he inspires millions of actors with that stuff that he did. But speaking of Godfather, I think Pacino's work in The Godfather is what I was really, really honing in on. This idea of how he internalized that character, how he spoke more with his eyes than with anything else. And a thing about that character and what kind of brought him into conflict with some of the producers on the film was that if you took a scene out of context, you didn't really know what he was doing. But when you cut the film together, and you watch it from beginning to end, you see the art. So I kind of was going for that. I really internalized a lot. In some ways, the character isn't too much of a stretch. You know, he was born and raised in Miami, so I didn't have to do anything with the accent. He's about my age and stuff like that, similar experiences. So that type of work, that wasn't the challenging aspect of the character. He's very easy to relate to for me. The challenge that I took was really, really, really honing in on stillness and letting my eyes do a lot of the talking. So I hope that I accomplished that. I mean, you'll be the judge of that. But I think it's true that if you take moments of the movie with my character out of context, it can be difficult to see who this guy is, you know. As opposed to other characters in the movie who we needed the actors to make bolder choices, louder choices, quote unquote, more obvious choices. We needed that. And sometimes that could be challenging to do in the sense of keeping that believable, you know. But the ensemble cast that had it around me made my job very, very easy because all I had to do really was kind of just react to them. And plus, I had lads behind the camera whenever I was in front, so that was good. But yeah, that's a little bit about what inspired me playing him, a little bit about what inspired the making of the film, and where we're at right now. So be on the lookout for The Magnificent Mendez. Hopefully you'll be in Orlando for the next screening. And if not, I'll hopefully be able to give you news on where we're going to live at. So whether, we are on a specific platform or news on who our distributor is going to be, because that'll give you an idea, you know. So hopefully we give that good news soon. And thanks for sitting through this rant. If you are curious about anything else, feel free to ask in the comments what you'd like us to talk about or update you on, and see you at the movies.